Tomorrow is going to be one of the biggest days of the year for Gwent. Not only do we have the balance changes for 11.7, but we also have the new Tide Rises expansion that has 36 new cards. And usually when we have both of these things in the same day, the patch notes are very short. With this one here, it basically goes along with that flow, and that's fine because we want to give these cards a chance to breathe. And if we have too many balance changes as well as the new cards, it's hard to determine if these new cards are good and what might need to be changed that otherwise, we'd be able to see if we didn't touch everything in the game. So most of the changes that we're probably going to be seeing here are going to be based on what we've seen over the last month in tournament play, and that's fine. I would expect changes to the new cards to be sometime between the next patch and the following patch, okay? So we'll go through it here. We'll split it up into two different videos. I will be talking about the 36 new cards in the next one, and we'll make sure we get that out before tomorrow as well. So with this patch, we have two new keywords, Might and Vice. Might is triggered when you control a unit with 10 or more power on each of your rows. So Might would trigger some sort of payoff based on these conditions, which is pretty interesting. I saw briefly they introduced this word with some monsters cards, so that's where I'm expecting most of it to be. Now, the new keyword Vice was something that I revealed. If you want to check out the reveal video, it's probably the last posted video on my channel. I had a card reveal for that along with the keyword. Trigger this ability after you spent the specified amount of coins, then reset own counter. Well, that's pretty specific to Syndicate. So, just something to think about when we're looking at the patch and when we're looking at the new cards. Alright, we have changes to neutral cards. Spring Equinox. Ability change to Doomed. Boost an ally unit by 0. Increase the boost by 1 for each nature card other than Spring Equinox in your starting deck. Okay, so this was a very problematic card, probably why it's in the actual title of this video, because they changed Spring Equinox and it quickly became abused. And if we look at Spring Equinox here, so boost an ally by 0, increase the boost by 1 for each nature in your starting deck. So what people were doing is they were loading in 11 or 12 nature cards, including 2 Spring Equinox. So these 2 plus maybe 9 or 10 others, depending on the deck. And then they were playing them, they were putting them back in the deck with Alyssa, which is an 8p that shuffles back a couple copies of specials, right? And then they were just abusing it. And we had plays like Forest Protector, where you were able to actually play it out of the grave, which was quite annoying too. It was like just free lottery points, right? Play from the grave. So you can imagine how that would get out of hand, and I believe it sort of took away from what the archetype was supposed to be about. So this is a very quick adjustment. As I mentioned, giving it Doomed was probably the best thing they could do for it. I don't know if they had to go in and maybe do the other part where they do besides Spring Equinox, because I feel like that basically kills the card. Doomed makes it playable, but it's hard to say. This kind of puts it at like a 5 for 10 plus maybe a little synergy with the Symbiosis Leader, and it doesn't get too out of hand. I'm sure they'll still be played, but it's not what we've seen over the last month. So when you queue into it, it doesn't feel like an auto loss, I'm sure of it. Okay, not nearly as scary. Now, that's the only change that they decided to do for neutral. And for monsters, we have Goliath, power change from 10 to 12. Now, Goliath was just a point slam with a poor condition, so it wasn't really played. They changed the power from 10 to 12, which tells me that they're trying to prep it up for maybe the Might keyword a little bit. I'll show you the card just so that you know what I'm talking about here. This one. Death Wish, your opponent summons the highest power unit from their deck to the opposite row. If this card gets killed, you really don't want that, so that's the problem. And 10 for 7 is a little power crept in today's game because there are a lot of 10 for 6 options. available, which is why you just wouldn't play this unless you had some nifty little move where you wanted to consume this to mill your opponent to get their best card out. That's a consideration as well. But usually that's not the line that we take. So with Goliath there, 12 is basically, it's bringing it up so that the power creep feels a little less, and maybe some people will play it. I don't expect it to be crazy, but we'll have to see how it goes. And that's pretty much it for monsters. Oh, no. We got a couple more. Never mind. Monsters are like probably the biggest on the patch this month. We have Juden as well. Power change from 3 to 1. Provision cost change from 6 to 8. Ability change 2. Deploy boost self by the total base power of ice giants in your starting deck. So that is very different than what we're seeing in the past. And I'll pull it up. This is another like unplayable card right now. So boost self by 2 for each unit more than your opponent controls. This would be played if you're doing the rat swarm, where you clog their side of the board by basically going in and using noon wraiths and then consuming them. Right, with these ones here, there are decks that can make many copies of this, consume them all, and then fill up the opponent's side with tokens, and then basically your opponent's forced to discard cards, and then you can go and you can play stuff like Glusty Warp at 9p, and, you know, get that payoff at the end. You can play stuff like the Juden, right, as well. So it's that sort of thing. But what they're doing with it is they're basically boost self by the total base power of ice giants. I'll leave that tongue twister in there for you guys. So these ones here, it's a reason to basically put these in the deck. You're getting a 14 boost on the card, but you're sacrificing a 5p slot times 2. Which is okay. I think that this will get really good value in like a Kashi deck, these types of decks where you want something that can proc Thrive, and 7 base power does that. It's not like a crazy card, but because of that change, it would make this card playable by default because the other one's so good. So I think that this package is going to be great. I don't think that people are going to be excited to play both of the Ice Giants unless they had maybe Intriga Larvas out there and they wanted to like proc Thrive on them and stuff like that. You know, the whole assembly line of Thrive stuff. 7 for 5 is kind of sad in today's game if you think about it. 7 for 4 is normal in today's game. 8 for 4 is decent. 10 for 4 is possible. You see what I mean? So I like this change, because you're basically taking 2 cards that no one plays and you're making them both somewhat playable, okay? We'll have a look here, and we have Cyclops, power change from 4 to 5. It's a very interesting card. Destroy an adjacent allied unit, then damage an enemy unit by the destroyed unit's power. The pitfall to this is that you're only gaining 4 points when you play it, so it doesn't feel like a tempo play, and Modern Gwent is a very fast game, which creates that problem. So if they're boosting the base power here, it's helping a little bit with that power creep. I think it's still a very cool option, because depending on what you destroy on our side, you might get an additional payoff for that, right? And I'm referring to basically anything maybe with Death Wish. That's monsters, obviously. You can imagine that destroying a Bridge Troll or a Noon Wraith or a Succubus, like, these options wouldn't feel too bad. Harpy Egg, Foglet, right? So that would probably be the line that you take. Maybe it's just a little extra control in a deck that otherwise wouldn't have much. I think one of the best targets for Cyclops would probably be Rotfiend, because you basically get the 5 damage and then you get the extra 5 damage, so you'd be able to dish 10 damage around. And if they had 2 engines at 5 power, which would be the perfect case scenario, then you're just basically laughing, clipping that, posting it, and getting views, you know? So you're good. And Not bad change of Cyclops. Again, it's not going to make a huge difference. I think people will try it. I don't think it'll be a staple, but I do think that maybe you'll see like a one-off in a deck. And to me, one is always better than none, so we'll take those. That's it for monsters for real this time. We have Skellige coming up next, and Crack on Crate now also has the Warrior tag. So Crack was one of those things where we wanted to play him. It felt like we were supposed to play him, but a lot of times we weren't playing him because he was often getting answered, and it would just turned into a 7 for 10 with a bit of armor, which was okay, but we want to get some damage off this as well, right? It is a damage engine after all, with a cooldown, and we have the Clash ability that can help us just wipe everything the opponent plays. So with that one here, having the Warrior tag allows us to maybe put it in a Warrior's deck. It gives us a little bit more flexibility when we're trying to create something new, and you might see this in something that you otherwise wouldn't have seen it in the past, and that's not a problem. I don't think it's going to be really game breaking or anything like that. It's going to be a little more flexible. Now, the next one I like quite a bit is Wild Boar of the Sea. They took the power from 4 up to 6, and for good reason, because if you look here, I should really filter these cards more, but I'll find it. Nope. It sucks because the name it's slipping my mind too. We'll go over Wild Boar of the Sea first. So deploy melee damage all damaged enemy units by 1, then damage all enemy units by 1. Amazing card if the board state suggests, it's ready to go. And it's a really bad card otherwise. So to increase the floor is great. Increasing the ceiling is up to us as a player to figure out. So Patricidal Fury, leader ability with those tokens would be useful. Just anything that we're distributing damage and they have a lot of red on their side of the board is going to be a good board state for this card here. Now, I'm determined to find what I was looking for. It's a dragon. There you go. Ockfist. I use Ockfist in a lot of decks, and I find that Ockfist is just a very good value card that requires less setup than Wild Boar. And I actually put out a deck guide this past month where I played Skellige and I used Ockfist instead of Wild Boar. And I think people were asking why. Because the card has a better floor. That was basically it. We're not even having to play into the lineage and having more dragons in the deck. It's just the fact that it comes down for 6 points. It has Cataclysm for 2 turns. Basically, we're looking at 6 minimum and up to 12 if they have a card out there. And then the timer, we get to damage the whole board. And that can go up to 18. So you can imagine why this card just felt so good. And a lot of people aren't even playing Devotion Skellige anyways right now. So with Wild Boar now at 1 provision less, more lore friendly, it has more synergy with the decks that we're going to be putting it in, and it has a better floor. It's going to see much more play. I think that was a much needed change because it's a great card. I want to see more of it, but the timing is not always right for that card. And we've seen it come and go over the years, and I think that now it has more of an opportunity to stay, especially with all the decks that are going wide these days. It's going to be good payoff. We'll take a look at the next one here. We have the On-Crate Armorsmith. When I can't think of the artwork off the top of my head, it's a card that's probably not played that much. I think I know, but I'm not sure. Provision change from 4 to 5. Ability change to boost an allied unit by the amount of armor on the highest armor unit in your hand. That's really cool. So for all you Irish Shade fans, for all you armor carryover fans, this is going to be another tool that you can play in around armor with, right? So basically, just something to mess around with here. Let's have a look. This one. Boost an ally unit by 2 if its damage boosted by 4. Very underwhelming. So it's 4 for 4, at best 6 for 4. Human with no tag that's really doing anything. There's no synergy with much, right? So to have that now boosting and playing around the armor, it's probably going to actually get some use. And if you stack armor on something, what I'm thinking of immediately is Terror of the Seas. If you stack this, because it plays really well with the Onslaught leader ability, you can get this up over 10 easy. Okay? Now, the other card becomes conditional to get that point slam. It's not like the Spring Equinox slam we're talking about in the past, where you basically do nothing and you have a great point slam. This is more strategy to get to where you want to be, but the payoff is fair. So that's going to be a really cool thing to see that unfold, and that's something that I want to try for myself. I like the direction of that one, and I hope it's not bad on paper. It doesn't look too bad here. I just hope it can't be abused. With On-Crate Greatsword, it now also has Veteran. This is interesting. So it's more of a reason to want to bring these back with Herald, or to bring them back with your Tyr and Fukusha and all that, and recycle them. And On-Crate Greatsword back in the day used to be uncapped. This card used to get up to like 50, 60 points, believe it or not, for a 6p bronze. And now it's capped at 10. The fact that it has Veteran means the base power is going to increase at the end of every round. And if we have King Bran in the deck, we're basically going to be able to proc the Veteran at the beginning of the game. Now, going back to Greatsword, with this card here, it does damage itself by 6. And when we give damage for every ping or damage dealt, essentially, on the pings, we heal self by 1. So we get it back up to the full health. Some people play this with Megascopes and make copies of it. You could do whatever you want. The problem is, this card, proactively, is horrible. You need to be able to have damage on the board to be able to use it right away, or use a leader charge so that it sticks. Because when you put this card down at 4 points, people say, you know, I can use 4-point removal, 5-point, 6-point, it doesn't matter because I'm basically removing 10 at a discount. Now, when the base power is higher due to the Veteran, and when it's procced at the beginning of the game with King Bran, then this card damaging itself by 6 is immediately out of most removal, and people will think twice before they go and spend the removal cards in order to take it out. Okay? It might be seeing more heat waves and more stuff like that than it would before. People have to trade up or trade even, which is what we'd like to see from something like this. What else we got? Highland Warlord. They added, I always say voice effects, but sometimes I get corrected and people say visual effects. Usually there's voice effects when the card's deployed. I don't know if there's usually visual effects when the card's deployed. So I'm going to say that they're talking about the voice effects. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter. The card's fixed, right? Northern Realms coming up here next. We have Queen Meve, also has the Aristocrat tag. Interesting enough. Ability changed. So I guess they just didn't like her. She didn't see much play. She didn't really see any play. It was very ambitious. 7 power, 2 armor, inspired in order to make the condition work. Whenever the unit receives a boost, you gain 1 armor, that's great and everything. But it's basically a swarm payoff at the end of 3 turns. Tough to pull off. Because people can just wait and then bank removal on her at the end. You know what I mean? So we have the ability change to deploy, reduce the timer by 1 for each adjacent unit with the inspired ability. Or with an inspired ability. Which is interesting because you're playing more into that inspired. And the timer 3 boost all allied units by 1 and reset the timer. Whenever this unit receives a boost, gain 1 armor. So they basically made it so that the cooldown will tick faster depending on if we're playing it beside cards that have an inspired ability. Now, if we're looking at inspired, this is not difficult. It puts cards that maybe wouldn't be played, like the Royal Guards that I never see, and Priscilla, which I never see. People don't even pick this off the temple, right? Like if you're getting 3 choices of gold cards to, I think it's called temple, right? Yeah. People won't even play this off temple. You get 3 choices of gold cards you want to add to the deck, and it's often skipped. I think I took it a couple times though when I played Siege, but usually you're going to be seeing stuff like this and these, maybe Dandelion, these in like a 5/10 muted generator deck. We have options, and all you got to do is sandwich her in between those, and then the timer is quicker. So just actually another tool to make the shuffle Northern Realms even more aggressive and abusive. So this feels to me like a buff into this archetype. Just saying. So that's probably going to draw different opinions. I would say most of them negative, because I'm tired of seeing those shuffle decks. I don't know about you guys, but there's definitely no shortage of them. So we'll see how this pans out, but maybe it brings back other stuff as well, like the classic Swarm, Uprising, like that kind of stuff would be interesting to see too. All the other kings and queens, including Ildaiko, now have the aristocrat tag. Okay. Just a little minor lore thing. Scoia'tael Spring ability changed to manual activation of face down trap. I think that's just clarification. Spring is activated automatically on a trap played next to an artifact. Okay, that's cool. Cards with Spring are flipped over after use. So it's this part that they changed. It makes you have to really think about your positioning, or position strategically to make things spring. Interesting enough. Hatori power changed from 2 to 6. Provision changed from 9 to 6. Ability changed to whenever you play an artifact, boost the lowest power allied by 3. That's probably going to cause some some controversy here. Hatori was a fun card. There we go. So right now, he's being able to create and play a trap from our starting deck over again. And oftentimes you'd see him used with Serpent Trap here, I would say the most, but also I think Pitfall would be a big candidate for that. And they said nope. And this likely has to do with the new traps they're bringing into the game. They don't want to abuse them, so they're saying, let's just change what Hatori does to prevent that from being a problem. And it actually makes other cards more playable at the same time, because we have stuff like this. Move trap back to the hand, play the trap. So we have this to play, and oftentimes not played enough, and we can just do that. And these are fairly similar, if you think about it, already. So it's nice that maybe we have a little bit more synergy with the boost or the payoff when we play traps. It also helps us get a little more points out of traps decks, and maybe inspires us to start playing Elven Scouts again. You could see the potential already with that. We have Arvith power change from 4 to 6. Which is what I was talking about. So even better. 6 power, replay as a trap, and then it's only 9p. So it can fit in your Golden Necker deck still. It can fit in everything that it was in before. It's just a little higher floor, which is great. And then Arvith's Gambit, added the new part of the ability. If you have 6 or more traps in your starting deck, play 2 of your choice instead. So with this here, it was random, and 12 provisions for a random play is very expensive. So people just weren't playing it. There were better ways. You were using Saskia for thinning, and then you were just playing traps from hand, and that was more effective. In this case here, we have the ability to have the 6 traps and then to choose them. So we'll make traps decks real traps decks and be able to play all the cards that are involved. So I think that this was really good for the archetype. It just makes it more reliable, and you know, once in a while we run in the traps and we're like, oh, there's that guy playing traps. But I wouldn't mind seeing it a little bit more than how often we do. Okay. Nilfgaard coming up here next. Ardfane, heavy cavalry provision change from 5 to 4. There's so many cards that have this term. There we go. So this one, it's a really cool card. At the end of your turn, gain 1 armor, ranged. If it reaches 5, move to melee. And then basically it sort of like duels off against the next card played because we just lose the armor and damage it. We don't take damage beyond the armor, but it's a nice little 5 damage. I don't think we need more cards to help support Renfrey soldiers, if I'm being honest. The fact that it's going from 5 to 4 is going to support that directly. So I'm not super happy about the change, but I hope that people decide maybe we can play this like an actual soldiers deck. But the problem is there aren't enough gold cards besides things like Ramon and stuff like that that we really want to play to make soldiers like amazing, you know? Anything that can just print them is good, but beyond that, there's not like a lot of gold payoff finishers. So the Triss Renfrey thing is just going to be popular for some time, I would imagine. Syndicate with no changes. I don't like that at all. There's got to be something you can do. You give everybody else some love, except for Syndicate. I don't know what to say about that, man. Come on. But soon, hopefully, next patch, give us a bunch. But no is... Come on. You gave them 1. I don't know. There's got to be a good reason for it. Game fixes. Friendly matches are once again functional on Steam. I don't play on Steam, so I don't care. We'll no longer play Tricks on Your Eyes. Okay, so they got rid of the TA glitch, which I'm so happy about because that was really annoying. You click Tactical Advantage and then it stays on your board, or you don't even have it in your deck, or you're not even going first, and for whatever reason it's on your side of the board. So we're good. That's being fixed tomorrow. Awesome. Acid Spit's infusion no longer fails to spread when the power is set to 1 by Wolfsbane or Vincent. I guess people actually tried this interaction. That's interesting. So cards that set things to 1 should trigger Acid Spit's infusion ability. It only makes sense. So it's a quick little fix. And that's pretty much it. I'm curious to see what you guys have to say about the patch. Are you looking forward to these changes? Do you think that some of them were too harsh? Do you think that some of them weren't enough? Let me know in the comments below, and I will be posting another video on the 36 new cards later today, so stay tuned for that, and I'll see you guys this coming week for Patch Week. I'm really excited about it. I'll make sure to do a stream at some point, and I'll try to get these uploads as consistently as possible. Thanks again, guys. Hope you have a great day, and I'll catch you in the next one.